when you're going to school, you always expect to receive the proportionality of knowledge to make you develop, right? However, the system of age-based arrangement is proven to can provide this proportionality, as the method of different intelligence between students make the study approach is also very different for each student, ladies and gentlemen. That's why, as government side of the house, we want to change this arrangement of classroom based on intelligence rather than age itself. So, before I'm moving on to my arguments, let's define this motion first. This arrangement means that the students' classification will be based on how high is their intelligence is and their academic performance. There will be like the test before you are entering which classroom that you will be enter, ladies and gentlemen. Status quo shows that the arrangement is still based on the age similarity and not the intelligence, right? The problem of this status quo is that on how there is the inactive effectivity of studying and teaching, on how it is hard to fulfill the goal of education because there is a too broad range of competition, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why, as government side of the house, our goal is here is that to get the better learning system and arrangement of classroom to create a fairer competition, ladies and gentlemen. With our clear mechanism, we will change the arrangement of classroom and also the letter enrollment to the schools. With our stance is clear that we will arrange the student in classroom based on their intelligence rather than on their age. So what we have to prove to you in this debate? First, we have to prove to you why this classification is very important to create a fairer competition, and second, why it will be better for the aftermath and the actors involved. Meanwhile, opposition side of the house must prove to you first why this is not justified to do, and second, why it will be harmful instead for the actors that are involved. Two arguments in my speech. First, the justification, and second, the trade-off. Going to my justification. How is exactly the characteristic of classroom arrangement nowadays? Age as the determination and prioritization of students to enter a school, which means that the age must be similar for each student, ladies and gentlemen. This means that all students get exactly the same way of learning despite their different intelligence and capability of understanding. Means that the school doesn't care at all about whether or not you want to understand the lesson as long as you just attend the school, ladies and gentlemen. We think that this is very unjustified based on two reasons. First, this is not fulfilling the value of education. A value of education, as in the proportionality of learning for students and media to develop, cannot be fulfilled, right? Because different intelligence means that you have different ways of learning, you have different pace of understanding the knowledge, you also have different approach to be able to fulfill the certain parameter of the score, ladies and gentlemen. We think that the generalization is very unfair because it forces the lower intelligent student to keep up even if they cannot have the ability to it due to the lottery of birth, and also it helps the higher intelligent students because they mostly already understand fully what the teaching. Also, that's why there are many cases of higher intelligent student doesn't want to attend the class or attend the school, that even there are labels like the lazy geniuses, ladies and gentlemen. We think that this is very not proportionate because students cannot develop themselves in their knowledge and their maximum capability, ladies and gentlemen, because echo chamber will always affect your way of learning as a student, whether or not it is in your motivation or even in your way and your pace of learning system, right? If you cannot receive the knowledge, it means that in the end, function of school also don't work because you cannot apply the knowledge because you don't understand the knowledge in school, and the school become useless if it's this way, ladies and gentlemen. But onto my second reason, the nowadays education system also doesn't support the segregation that is based on age. There are two systems I'm talking about. First, the teacher-centrist, on how teacher is one-way communication to the students rather than a student-centered education, ladies and gentlemen. Which means that teacher doesn't necessarily have to show their merit, they just have to explain the lesson and doesn't have to concern whether or not this student is actually capable to learn and understand what is the material about, right? So what is the comparative in this case? In our side of the house, teacher will be pushed and and expected to search other method of learning because teacher will have to be flexible with the classification of this classroom, ladies and gentlemen. It means that teacher will have more responsibility to concern whether or not these students have the capability to learn and understand the lesson, because this is the purpose of the classification intelligence since the beginning, right? The second system I'm talking about is that the highly competition of nowadays. We think that this competition is an expectation that must be fulfilled by the students, right? However, there are some students that doesn't want to be left behind. That's why they are being irrational and doing irrational things like cheating, because they feel that they are unable to keep up with the lesson. That's why they are cheating, because they don't want to be left behind with the competition, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why this competition, to be able to fair for students to not be cheating in the end of the day, must get on how the students can learn in the better way and understand what is exactly the lesson, because this competition is in the end of the day use merit as a parameter, right? So why not just segregate it based on intelligence anyway? In the end of the day, that will be based on the meritocracy rather than the age itself. Now, going on to my second argument, the trade-off. Opposition might say that there will be discrimination and level of how there is a high and lower intelligence students. First, we say that this is not exclusive. It will also happen in their side of the house. But we think this will be better in our side of the house, because at least the comparison between highly intelligent and lower intelligence students will not be directly inside the same classroom, ladies and gentlemen. You will not be pointed out by the teacher as the one who have lower intelligence compared to your other friend that have a higher intelligence, ladies and gentlemen. At least in our side, you will still have your own pace to understand the knowledge, because you will have a more conducive class rather than in their side of the house that is have the class that is hard to be conducive. Because in our side of the house, teacher will also be assigned to new tasks as the one who motivate and also incentive the student to study, ladies and gentlemen. The lower intelligence students will also have more motivation to study, because the classmate will have the same learning pace. There will be more easy to wanting to study together and have peer-to-peer learning to work together also, ladies and gentlemen. Added the teacher as a check and balance, we think that this trade-off is better on in our cases. So what is exactly the comparative? The comparative is that the competition itself, ladies and gentlemen. At least in our side of the house, the competition will be more proportionate, and at least the value of education will be more fulfilled in our side. That is the development of the students to be effectively functioning as the school, that the knowledge can be applied even after school. Because government, as we know, already invest a lot, that it is not effective. If not effective, the education system, that is, this all infestation will just go to waste. We think that it is better to fulfill our proposal we proudly propose.